question to you. Could you share how your communication and engagement strategy has evolved in Augusta since the beginning of the pandemic?
Well, I mean, it sort of bounced back and forth because I've been in Augusta since September. And so I'll use some of my previous experience as well to sort of talk about how we did some things in my previous life as well. Because before I got to Augusta, my other city that I was with, we were very involved in Facebook and those types of things. And more so probably from a leadership perspective than a city perspective. And so what the pandemic did was really make us ramp up our social media. How do we reach out to all of our various organizations that are within the community? The population was more senior based. A lot of, retirees, folks who've been in the city before it was the city, own their own homes, those types of folks, and a working class population. And so really trying to figure out how do we now engage them in all the things that we had going on. We had a robust Parks and Recs program. So we had, fitness and, swimming and you name it, we did it. We had started Haitian Creole classes and Spanish classes and like literally everything that you could possibly think of, we were doing on our parks to make sure that folks had things to do. Our seniors came into the parks like 3 times a week. So they knew what they were going to do on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. They knew they were going to see their friends. And so how do you augment that was sort of the conversation. And so we started doing literally everything that we could do virtually. So we did, virtual aerobics, we did yoga, we did nutrition and cooking classes. And then when we could bring in folks, while we couldn't be in the same room, you might see, the nutritionist and the chef on one screen and maybe the mayor on the other, and they were interacting. And then you would see the interactions coming up on the feed. So people wanted to engage however they could because that was the way they could touch folks. Much like Michael, most cities aren't really into sort of the human and health services pieces. But one of the things that we did find was, how do we make sure that our residents are good when they're going through the pandemic? They're, losing jobs or they are homeschooling all of a sudden and they're teachers and now it's 3 meals a day as opposed to 1. How do we help sustain our businesses? And so some of that engagement was really sitting down and talking with them. How can we help you? And so, when you started talking about business relief, a lot of our businesses were small, family-owned restaurants. So we engaged with them to say, well, we want to make sure that our families have meals. So how do we figure out an interesting way to deal with funding to make sure that you can provide the meals? What do we need to do from the city side? And then where do we sort of give the meals away? So we did meals for families, I want to say almost 4 or 5 months until like the end of school. And then we partnered with the stadium that was in the city. They then became sort of our meal person. And they were like, we just need to know who within your community. Well, there were pockets of organizations. So we had a grandparents organization who unfortunately through the pandemic saw an increase of grandchildren living with them. So you might go from, 2 people to 5 people to 7 people in your home. And they were like, we can't sustain this. So being able to make sure that they had the right connections to get food throughout the week, right? So it's little things like that we made sure we were doing as well. And then it was, sometimes it's just you pick up the phone and it's just the old school type of engagement with your residents. The residents have your cell phone numbers, so they know how to text, they know how to call. And it's just having those conversations, telling them how they can avail themselves of the government. Because once City Hall closed down, they didn't know what to do or how they were going to get things done. And then, of course, like everybody else, we moved all of our meetings to YouTube and virtual and Zoom and X, Y, and Z. But for those people who are not, digitally savvy or have access, how do we maintain that? We started a community newspaper that we pushed out. It was all of those little things and little touches. So it was the digital touches, but then it was still sort of remaining, keeping the human touch as well, where you knew people needed it. And then learning how to access your community members' networks, right? So the ARPs, the grandparents, the PTAs, the homeowners association, how do we make those connections? So one, they're connected, but we're also connected with them. What we saw was an increase in one, commission meetings, folks watching and participating, but also an increase in folks doing, you know, yoga online. People were waiting for our Spanish classes and our Creole classes and wanted other things to do. So when I look at sort of where we are here in Augusta, it's very similar. Everything is online. We just started doing COVID conversations with the mayor this past Monday and looking at specific communities of color and what that looks like and having real authentic conversations, because at the end of the day, whether you're in person or you are across the computer from someone, they want to feel like you're going to be honest with them, that you're going to engage with them in a way that appreciates where they are. And you're going to inform them and educate and encourage and empower them, but not tell them, you know, what to do, but give them enough information for them to make an informed decision. And so I think those are some of the things that we continue to balance as we move through this. And I think it's something that we will continue to learn as we get into 2021, because I'm not sure that we're going to change back to what our normal was anymore.
That may be a question we want to ask a little bit later. I'm kind of curious. I love the term little touches, because that does describe a lot of ways. In fact, it follows up on what Michael was saying. It's just the way that the simple things of connecting with people on a human level. If you were to recommend one way that has been successful for you to have successful outreach with, say, the elderly group, what would you recommend communities consider?
One, you got to know your seniors. So, and you have to sort of know who those leaders are within the senior groups, because then literally now I've been gone from Miami, months now, and I still get those calls and the text messages. And now it's just checking in on me because I checked in on them. And so what you have to do sometimes is you go and knock on the door, or you go and you call and you say, hey, are you good? Do you need anything? It's just those things. Sometimes we forget because we get so busy in all of the work that we're doing and all the projects we're trying to push out that, those are the folks that built these communities. And sometimes their family, especially now, can't get to them. So we become sort of that family for them. So if I can send a text message just to say, hey, are you good? Do you need anything? Oh, by the way, I would let an elected know, oh, did you know Miss So-and-so had surgery? Do you want to send anything? It's those things, because they are those folks that are coming to commission meetings in person. Those are the folks that are calling you, hey, I need some help with this. And now all of a sudden, they don't have that anymore. So how do we continue to do that? So it's always making sure you got to know people personally. And, it's hard when it's a large city. That was 113,000 people. And to try to get to know everybody is really hard. But you got to know those key members that are influencers for you, because those are the folks that then, touch the other people and will let their people in their group know. So they become family. You make them family. They're not just your constituent or your resident.
That is so helpful. Thank you.